see the little record pop up. Record. All right. Oh, you're Wade.
All right, we might as well get started on the service committee meeting at 6 o'clock, March 22nd. We'll call a roll. I guess Rick's on vacation, so Brandy, you're here, and me, and we got the mayor and village administrator, Mr. Coughlin there. Looks like Chuck's tuning in, and we got Tim.
No, that's Brad, actually.
Brad, sorry. Yeah, you're on his computer. Okay.
Yeah, mine's not. The audio's not working.
So I looked over the minutes from last meeting. They looked okay. Did you see anything in there?
I don't see anything that needs fixed, so I would just approve the minutes.
I'll second that. So we'll go ahead and file those last meeting minutes as approved. For this meeting, does Mr. Brian Coughlin have anything that he would like to bring in?
Wade, this is Terry.
Wade.
I would like to kind of go by the wayside with all of the reports and focus mainly on the wastewater treatment plant. And that's why Brad and Brian C are on, because they're going to talk about our overflows and where we're at, current status, how we're going to go forward, ultimate end goal. So I wanted to leave it open to a lot of questions and answers after their presentations, if you don't mind.
That'd be great. So did they want to get started now?
Yes, I believe so. Okay, whoever's starting, Brad, you?
I can go through the timeline real quick of the events from last week to the now till today, and then Brian, if you want to go over yours, if that's okay.
Works for me.
Yeah, I'll do it. So March 10th, I received a phone call from Terry. She had received a phone call from the EPA emergency response. I guess there'd be a rep. Basically, somebody called in our overflows and made a complaint. So he told Terry that we had to have a team out the following day with the vac truck to try to do a cleanup of some sort. When he got here, he and I walked around the plant, the overflow. He kind of took a look around, told us that there was some trash that needed picked up. Wasn't a whole lot. Needed to try to mitigate our overflow and try to reclaim as much of it as we could back to the plant. He kind of left it up to us in a way of what our plan would be to try to improve the situation. So we came up with taking a fire hose and putting on the back side of our outfall, trying to flush clean water through the channel that the overflow takes to. And then we also dug a ditch just upstream of the creek before the overflow goes there. And we put a 3-inch pump there and started pumping water back to the plant, trying to reduce as much overflow to the creek as possible. He was okay with that. He contacted us a couple hours later to see where we were at. Pretty much done with everything he asked us to do. We even took it a step further with the vac truck and spraying out. There's a little catch basin just outside that wasn't the best of color because of the overflow. So we washed that all down. He was pleased with that. He asked me to take some pictures and send them to him to show him what we've done. I did that as well. Asked us to just keep him informed of any more overflows or what else we were doing to try to clean this up a little bit. I've kept him in the loop pretty much since he came out here. We did have to divert just a little bit a couple days after that, just from some rain. I updated him on that, told him that we turned our hoses and everything back on and our pumps back on, and he was good with that. Just basically wanting us to keep them in the loop of what we were doing, making sure that we are doing something about it. I also told him, our issue with the loading that we've been experiencing and what we are doing to fix the problem with our solids and the sludge and getting the membranes back to the normal process. So I also notified Carla that he was here. I've been keeping her up to date with everything, reports and everything since this all started. She seemed okay with what we were doing. And pretty much we still have our hose out there and our pumps and everything out there in case we are overflowing. So I think that once we get the solids and we get our membranes back to normal, we can get rid of all of that stuff. And I think they'll be happy with that. So just keeping them updated and in the loop of what we were doing is really what they want to hear. So,
Brad, I think at this point, because when everybody hears the words, and it was unusual for me, EPA, you think, well, haven't you been talking to the EPA? Well, you have been, because you've been reporting the overflows. I think it's important to tell them who Carla is and tell them who the other EPA person is, please.
Now, Carla is our consultant, our EPA consultant for the wastewater. I don't know if those two departments, the emergency response team and the wastewater, I don't know if they communicate or not, because Ben really didn't know anything about what was going on here. So Brian, I don't know if you have any sort of idea if they communicate or not within the departments. It doesn't seem like they do. So, but we have been notifying our EPA consultant since this has all started with reports and everything. So
Yes, to answer that question, Brad, is that Carla is assigned she's your compliance and enforcement representative from Ohio EPA. She's your data representative. The Office of Compliance and Emergency Response is a different division. Basically, it's a spill hotline. If somebody calls into the 800 spill hotline number, then they respond in some way, shape, or form. They have to respond within some way, shape, or form within a certain timeline. And then from there, they see what action is going to be taken and decide what other units within Ohio EPA need to be pulled into the discussion or situation. They're more of a first responder, if you will, from the Ohio EPA. And then from there, it's handed off to other folks within the agency. He basically puts a report together and, notes. In this case, his name was Ben. Ben noted what he observed and the response, and then files a report with his agency.
Yeah. So, like I said, Carla had been notified about everything. She just asked what he asked us to do, if we have done it, and I said yes. Everything that he asked us to do was done. We are continuing to do that. We're continuing to try to flush out the path that the overflow takes, and try to reclaim as much as we can. So when we do overflow, so she seemed happy with that, and I've been updating her on where we are at with fixing the overall problem with the solids and getting the membranes back to the normal process.
So to follow up on that, Terry and Brad reached out to me and asked for our input, V3's input on this. We kind of take the position that it's better to be proactive and responsive to Ohio EPA rather than reactive to Ohio EPA. They want to see that you're paying attention. They want to see that you are taking environmental issues seriously, that they want to know that somebody is paying attention. And as such, and Terry and I and Tim talked about just how to respond, what a good response would look like, and an appropriate action plan. So what I have done is I've put together a coordinated response that is, it talks about immediate responses. What was the immediate response that the village took in this instance? And Brad just explained that to everyone here on the meeting. And then from there, recommendations, short-term action plan, long-term action plan. Immediately when I heard about this issue, a number of items came to the forefront of my mind. The number of issues are this. One is what we know is infiltration and inflow, clean water getting into the sanitary sewer system and using up capacity in your sanitary sewer system, whether it's stormwater runoff, whether it's sump pumps, whether it's groundwater getting into the sanitary sewer. There's an ongoing study that the village has contracted with us to complete. I have a draft of it sitting here in my file where it's going through QA/QC review. Some of that effort was hampered last year because of COVID, whether it was field investigation work by ourselves or by the village or by a third party. But we are to the point where we are wrapping that up, and we're going to identify a series of steps to be taken, measures to be taken to reduce the amount of clean water, storm water getting into the sanitary sewer system that's using up some of the capacity and causing some of these overflow events. As Brad said, we had some rain and it caused us to overflow. That's not the only variable that causes that wastewater plant to overflow on occasion. In September of last year, Greif's facility began directing a new waste stream from their lagoons into the village's collection system. It was all done in a coordinated agreement called a memorandum of understanding that we all reviewed and had engineers involved and plant managers involved and village administration involved and operations involved. And it was a very coordinated effort, and Ohio EPA was involved as well. They did not want to see that, the Ohio EPA did not want to see Greif continuing to discharge directly to a water of the state. They wanted it being treated some other way, and the village of Baltimore made the most logical sense. I will say the first 2 months, it was very successful. But then while we were kind of lulled to sleep and thinking that, hey, no issues, 2 months, these guys have been online, no issues. The results look great. We were lulled a little bit to sleep, and the next few months, there's been some variation in terms of what they're putting out the pipe into the village's system. And because it's a large flow and it's a different waste stream, there's going to be a learning curve there into how to treat that waste. And it's going to shift some things for the operations staff there at the Village of Baltimore. And it's going to require, first and foremost, getting rid of more sludge on a more regular basis. They're paying for it, through the volumes that they're putting into the sewer. But, it's going to require a pretty large percentage of increase of wasting from the wastewater plant in order to keep up with this new waste stream. So that's the second thing that we are paying attention to. The village also has contracted with their lab to put in a sampler out there on a more regular basis to try to identify exactly what we're getting from Greif, how often, and to try to pay attention to some of the trends that we're seeing from that facility. Ultimately, EPA did issue them what they call an indirect discharge permit, meaning they're discharging indirectly to a water of the state, indirectly meaning it goes through Baltimore's treatment process first. I think the village is going to want to also issue a separate permit for them to help regulate that discharge, because what we're seeing is not exactly what was agreed to. I think they can get it there. I've talked to their consultant, but it's something that we're going to have to pay attention to until we can all come to a place of mutual agreement. So that's the second item. Thirdly, is we kind of came into the winter months with a heavy solids inventory there at the wastewater plant, meaning a lot of sludge in the plant. And then when this heavier solids started coming through from the Greif facility, we really had no place to put them. Then we got into an extended cold snap, And just the way the sludge operations are down there, it's tough to manage when in the middle of a frozen period of time. And now that we know this, Brad has ordered more bags for sludge dewatering. They're working on contracting with Metropolitan Environmental Services to come in and get rid of this big load of solids inventory so it can be properly disposed of. And it'll be easier to manage going forward on a more regular basis. But getting rid of that heavier solids inventory is something that, you know, facilities and operations they just weren't used to. And now it's become apparent. And the timing of it was just unfortunate in that it happened to coincide with that period of frozen tundra that we were dealing with there just several weeks ago. So those are kind of the reasons behind what we're seeing.
Janet, I just lost everything.
So the short-term goal, we talked about the short-term action plans there. The long-term action plans are to begin to implement some of these capital improvements concepts from the I&I plan, whether that's lining, sump pump discharge, disconnection program, additional storm sewers. You know, in one community, we replaced vented manhole lids with solid manhole lids. It made a huge improvement. So there's just a series of things that between Brad's crew and our report, we're going to be able to identify and reduce the amount of I&I infiltration and inflow going into the sanitary sewer system. One of the items that the operations team has expressed to us is a desire to expand the equalization basin down there. Basically, that's a big holding spot in the ground to hold heavy flows during rain events and then treat it later on when flows are reduced. And the big question there has always been, you know, how big to make it. And it's coordinating a lot of information to get that to the proper size. You don't want it to be too big, but you don't want it to be too small. Brad and his team has also expressed an interest in expanding the holding tank capacity for the sludge down there at the wastewater plant. The big issue really is the electrical availability down there. It's going to require some electrical upgrades at that wastewater plant to expand into that area. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but I think it's going to be necessary in order to get Ohio EPA approval to permit modifying those tanks for additional sludge holding capacity. And then we talked about that plant was designed to be expanded, and all it would simply take was some additional modules, membrane modules down there. Now, the membrane modules that the village has were just replaced, so they're brand new, but there's an opportunity to increase the capacity of treatment down there by putting additional modules in. Don't know that that's necessary quite yet, but it may not be in the too distant future when there's an opportunity to expand that and provide additional treatment at that plant so that you don't have these overflows occurring. And then lastly, just kind of taking all this information and coming up with a CIP, a capital improvements plan, capital improvements program, what we call CIP. And you can kind of look at that and go, okay, for years 1 through 5, this is money we need to set aside, or these are the things we need to do. This is what it's going to cost. And then you look 10 years out and 15 years out and 20 years out. And, you know, the further you get out from today, the more ambiguous the information is, the less certain some of those dollars and cents are. But what it does, there's plenty of opportunities to find funding for these types of projects. But it does take some time to get into the cycle and apply for money and look for grant money and, you know, look for the least cost alternatives in order to meet the needs of the village. And I'm not asking you guys to spend a whole lot of money tonight. That's not why I'm here. But Ohio EPA is going to want to know, do they have a plan for dealing with some of this stuff? Does the Village of Baltimore have a plan for dealing with some of this stuff? And then you can start to map out, you know, what it's going to take in order to not have regular sanitary sewer overflow occurrences occurring at your wastewater treatment.
I muted it again.
So I've put all that together in a summary letter, one that, you know, that if the village feels comfortable, could forward on to Ohio EPA in the format that it is, to demonstrate that they've engaged a consultant to help them navigate through some of these overflow events.
Hey, Brian, let me ask this, because a lot of the stuff you just mentioned that's in that plan and the long-term stuff, like you said, is stuff we talked about. The one thing that we haven't really talked a lot about is, of course, the increasing the capacity to add the other cassettes, so that the plant could operate at its full designed capacity. My concern with sending that is that if we add those cassettes, don't we then go up to a class 3 wastewater plant, where we would need a class 3 operator? And I worry that, you know, that seems like a quick fix, long-term solution to prevent overflows, increase the capacity. But I'm worried that all of a sudden it becomes, well, you know, EPA says do that, and then all of a sudden we're at a class 3, and, you know, we're not really that big where I think we need to be at a class 3.
Right. Yeah, and you're not wrong. That potential definitely exists, if you go there. And, you know, in my mind, that is probably more on the far end of the long-term planning. You would identify these other things first, that are ready and apparent and obvious, which is stuff from the I&I plan, and then GRIFE and sludge inventory. And so, like engineering, it's kind of an iterative process. You work your way through some of these things and then kind of step back and go, okay, how effective was what we just did? Did that solve our problems, or do we need to kind of dig further into this? And, but I hear you loud and clear. That makes sense, what you're saying. Definitely merits some consideration.
But at this time, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not saying that expanding the plant is a solution to the problem. We're just saying it might be an alternative variable that may help us to get where we need. Until we thoroughly understand what's going on with what's coming from GRIFE and going into this heavy sludge sort of thing, the expanding the capacity of the plant really isn't our number one go-to goal, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Okay, just make
Well,
sure we're on the same page.
Well, and I agree. I just want to, sometimes, you know, we all hear horror stories about the EPA. I think we have a good relationship with them. I just see, okay, look, we can work on this I&I project, we can expand the basin, we can do this, we can do that. And all of those projects together take a couple years to do and everything. Or they have an option in front of them, expand the capacity of your plant. And maybe they start saying, well, why don't you expand the capacity of your plant? And then you don't have to enlarge your EQ basin. You don't have to do this sludge stuff. You don't have to do all this other stuff right away. And that's what I'm fearful of.
I believe that I understand what you say, and everybody is also always fearful of the EPA. But one of the things that I think Baltimore has learned from their past experience with the EPA is that they are there and they are the governing, entity over us. So it's better to work with that governing entity instead of against it. And like Brad has found out, and Tom, the people that we have had, well, even Joey from the EPA that we work with in issues, are all about, let's just get into compliance. It's not like, can I nail you to the wall for something that you did? And that's the good part about it. This plan that Brian has developed, as you know, we've had many conversations about it, and it is the way to go. Because when Paul left on our last meeting that Brad and I were at, he was just happy that we were doing what they asked. And the first thing they had asked was, guess what? Hire an outside engineering firm to help you through this. So I think, again, you know, while there's a whole lot on that report that Brian has put together for us, I don't want everybody to think that it's a lost cause, because it's not. I think it's education, understanding, and yes, sorry to say, trial and error sometimes.
Do we want to remove that option from the letter of expanding the plant? We know we could do it, I mean, theoretically, but if we're worried about the EPA telling us we have to, let's not give them any ideas.
Brian, what's your experience in that area?
Generally speaking, they are going to look at what's the most affordable for the village.
Mm-hmm.
And all they want to see is continued progress towards compliance. They generally don't tell villages, this is what you have to do. They just say, these are the parameters you have to meet. How you meet them is kind of up to you and your consultant. But, you know, as long as it meets our guidelines, but generally speaking, they're not going to say you have to use this technology, or you have to use this technology, or you have to get to, you know, this certain capacity in order to achieve our goals here at Ohio EPA. All they really want to see is that here's your limits, you know, show us how you're going to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they would rather see us work on fixing the issues like the I&I and all that, rather than just expanding the plant or capacity and putting a Band-Aid over it, because the I&I won't fix itself, and along with some of the other issues that we talked about. So I think they would rather see that happen than just say, okay, let's just make it bigger and not worry about all the other issues that are causing this problem.
But I think it's something we can ponder. You know, if you feel real strongly about it, Mr. Cosgrave. But I kind of agree that with Brian C. that I don't think they're going to slap our hands and say, okay, we want this fixed now, go make your plant bigger. I think they're going to take the wait see attitude. You know, it's like what Ben said when he was there, and I don't want to downplay this any at all. Trust me, you know, I'm a stand-up person. We're going to fix this issue. But, you know, he's seen worse. He goes out on these all the time. They're all over the state. That's why he basically has a job. So, you know, so they are used to addressing these issues. And the good thing about it is that the staff, and as you know, Mr. Cosgrave, you were out there with Brad and them for a day. They are good communicators. And I think that goes a long way. So as long as we keep talking to them, and this is what Mike told us when we were having an issue with the water, you know, as long as we were communicating with them and they understood, they could answer questions different if people called in, and it wouldn't get escalated to an emergency situation such as this. So that, again, that's a good thing I think about having, you know, the staff we have, including B3, who has always been really good interacting with the EPA. So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I don't want to downplay this, but I think it's a fixable situation. We just have to get all of our minds together.
I agree. I did come across an idea called bioaugmentation, where additives are put into the activated sludge. It modifies the biology and helps to reduce the sludge volume by changing the type of bugs. If the selective pressures inside that that biology changed, then the type of bugs change. The filamentous bacteria and bugs become under certain conditions more prevalent, and it increases the amount of sludge and the volume of the sludge just because of the biology. So I would like to look into that a little bit better for the future. Just something we could check into. But everything in the report, I read it was pretty good. So I think we can just pass it along pretty much as is.
Yeah, that's a great thing about this brainstorming. I call it brainstorming. Really, it's a service committee meeting, but look at, we have a council person that knows about bugs. Like it.
I think that's an interesting idea, Wade, that you've read about using bioorganisms to help deal with the issue. I think that absolutely is a good idea to look into.
Yeah. What is it? Suez. Brad, you know, the website I showed you with the handbook, there was a link to some products that Suez has, and they're directly, responsible for that bioaugmentation. It's a type of starter culture, if you will, or that you put into your activated sludge. If your conditions are right, it'll change the biology to a more favorable kind, thereby reducing the sludge because of the type of the biology. The structure is different.
Yeah, we looked over some of that stuff that you and I talked about when you were out there. The probes as well, the actual time reading probes, and we are actually talking to I can't remember now. I think it's Precision Digital to see if they have something. We found one that was over in the UK, but we're trying to find somebody that we already work with to see if they have something similar to that, and possibly putting one of those in over at Greif and even here at the plant. So we've been looking at some of the stuff that we talked about. So I did not get that far with the Suez and the biology though. So I will definitely look more into that and see what if that's something we could do and if it will be applicable with our sludge.
Yeah, I'm putting together like a set of links and some things I can probably email over to you. You can look into it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would also be interested in reading more about that.
Excellent. I'll send it to you too.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that was
So what I was gonna say. So what's the time frame once we get the report over to the EPA? They give us, do we hear back from them in a couple of days, or is it something we just hear back from them when we hear back from them on?
I don't know that it's anything that will necessarily warrant a response from them. But what I think will happen is that your compliance and enforcement individual, Carla, will use that information next time she sits down and does her annual sanitary inspection with Brad, and say, hey, okay, this is what you submitted to us. Where do we stand with some of these things?
Yeah.
And again, they'll just see demonstrated progress. I don't know that it will. It's good to have on file. They're going to want to see that, again, the village is paying attention when they receive a notice of violation and that they've responded in an affirmative way.
Yeah, and any time we've done something to work towards improving this, I've notified Carla, and I have now been notifying Ben. I notified him that we were hauling out sludge today. Tomorrow should be done, and that Monday, following next Monday, we will have our meter press, 2 meter belt press out here, getting rid of some of the sludge. So we were kind of held up by the weather. Metropolitan didn't want to bring a belt press in with the cold weather that we were having, and it's kind of hard to run a sludge bag that dewaters when it's below freezing outside because it doesn't want to drain very well. So now that we're finally into the warmer days so far, we're actually able to finally do stuff that's really going to help us get back to the normal process. So I've been notifying them of that. So they're happy with how fast we're moving on this.
Cool.
So since we have so many activities going on, and I'm sorry, Brad, I didn't talk about this with you before the meeting, so I know I'm catching you off guard. But since we have so many activities that's going on, as you heard Brad said, they removed some sludge today. We got new bags, they got some more things that they're going to be doing. Because it's such you know, a critical thing. Do we want Brad maybe to have maybe 4 or 5 bullet points that he, like on a Friday, he could put together and send out to council so they're aware of what he did for the week? Just so it doesn't get lost. Or are you satisfied with the way? I mean, we won't have another service meeting for a month. Well, I mean, we'll have a council meeting in 2 weeks, but I guess that's up to you. It's what you guys would like to see. If you want to be kept in the loop, then maybe Brad should send out, like we did before, Brad, maybe 4 or 5 bullet points.
That's fine.
Would you like to see that, Mr. Cosgrave?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Brandy, how about you?
Yes, please. So being that I'm the newest person to all of this, so my question is, so when this type of event occurs, number one is, how is this presented to people who are not on the committee and such? In other words, is this something that is noted?
Are you talking like noted to the rest of council?
Yeah, yes. Publicly,
So it would,
I'm just curious. I did read the letter from Barb. I'm just trying to understand.
one of the metrics they have on the service reports is overflows. And then if there's a bigger overflow in between service meetings, Terry will usually give us an update at the council meeting on it.
All right, thank you. I'm
if it's
curious what the response.
Yeah. If it's a small one, I don't know that we always hear, you know, if it's a low, I don't even know what you call it, a low flow overflow, we might not hear about it. But if it's a more substantial one, then we get the update as to what happened and how it was cleaned up.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But either way, just to go a little further, Brandy, and Brad can tell you this, he has a process that the EPA has in place that he has to do, regardless whether it's a small overflow or a large overflow. And you can tell her what you do then, Brad.
Yeah, when there's an overflow, there's a 24-hour report that we have to fill out, and I send to Carla, and then there's a 5-day overflow report that basically, usually if your overflow is within 5 days, at the end of the 5 days, you get your total flows, you take a sample of your overflow, have it tested, and then you send those results to, ours would be Carla. Or if you're overflowing for more than 5 days, you just put continuing overflow. Just keep them updated, let them understand what's going on in a way. So.
Sure, I'm sure there are certain steps and there are if-then charts and all of that. I was just curious as to, and I'll learn more as we go through these type of events. So thank you.
Brad, do you have anything you want to add? Brian C., do you have anything you want to add?
I was looking at the report, and your wet weather flows range from twice your normal daily flow to 4 times your normal daily flow. So the amount of clean water getting into the system is fairly substantial. And, it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And you're required to address it under your current permit from Ohio EPA.
Right. I think that I&I problem has been hounding the village for decades.
Correct.
Unfortunately, there's a large outreach and public relations element to that, and that is the sump pump disconnection program. It requires, because where do people put that water, right? And sometimes it requires some cost on the part of the homeowner to redirect their footer drain sump pumps somewhere else. And then how do you continue to ensure that they didn't hook it back up because now they've got water laying in their yard? And so there's definitely an outreach component to this that it's a challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge.
So we might need to build more sewer drops or runoff rainwater runoff drops.
Yeah, generally it's most effective when you have a storm sewer program to go hand in hand with it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but in that sort of stormwater sewer program type stuff, someone that might be emptying their basement water into our sanitary, we can make those. I mean, those are chargeable offenses, are they not? I mean, we under our program, we could make that. My issue is we know we have a lot of people here and they're going to say, well, my house has been like this for 80 years, so I'm not going to change it. So sometimes we need an enforcement mechanism. And so what I'm looking at is we have a mayor's court that does property maintenance stuff. And that is something that we could cite someone into court for if we identify it and they don't rectify it.
You absolutely have an enforcement mechanism built into your ordinances for that. Ohio EPA requires, the state of Ohio requires everybody have that enforcement mechanism in there. You guys definitely have that leverage and that ability. And I will say this, unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance out there when it comes to this. And when I say, I don't mean that to belittle anybody, but for a lot of folks, it's out of sight, out of mind. It goes down a pipe. That's all I know. They don't know the difference between what goes down the toilet and what goes out of their sump pump or what comes from their roof drain. They assume that it all just goes to one pipe and is handled by the village. And you know, there is an education component to this, to helping people understand that there is a difference between storm sewer and sanitary sewer.
And to Brian's point, it makes it even worse because way back when everybody thought it was okay to have combined, and they did say, yeah, just hook right into this sewer system. That's before the EPA, like Brian said, stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. So education is going to be a big thing for this council, because many of the people in the village are going to be upset because they've always had, say, their sump going into what they thought was the pipe where it needed to go, and now they're going to find out that they have to do something different. So it is going to be behoove us to make sure we do a good educational plan, which we will.
Just a thought, and I'll talk about this a little bit more at council, but on my call with the National League of Cities, talking about the new pandemic relief funds we're getting, they are not as restrictive as the old CARES Act funds. The lady said we're still waiting on information from Treasury because she said that the funds could be used for water, and sewer, but not wastewater. And I think she meant water and wastewater, and she was checking on storm sewer. But basically, we can use portions of those funds to offset costs that would increase costs to residents. So if we wanted to do a program like this, we may have funds available to not only provide education for it, but to help maybe a grant program, because it's not going to be cheap for someone to have someone come in with a plumber and do the lines. That maybe we have some sort of, grant fund set aside that we can do to help offset those costs for the residents.
Well, I will say, in addition to that, first I've heard of that, Brad, but it makes sense to me that Ohio EPA and the state of Ohio historically has only loaned money to government entities. They have not loaned money to private residences or private businesses. Mm-hmm. But they are starting to recognize that in order to have, a bigger impact, that they would be willing to loan through the village money to these folks, because, these problems didn't evolve overnight, and they weren't solved when these folks bought their houses and built into their mortgage. Asking somebody to come up with $5,000 out of pocket to fix a sump pump issue, that's a stretch for a lot of people. And so they're offering a lot of programs now, whether it is in the lead, on the drinking water side, lead, getting rid of lead service lines, or on the wastewater side, fixing sanitary sewer issues such as this. They're starting to offer these programs out there. But this is why I said it takes a couple of years to get into the cycle, right? That's something, if the village is interested in pursuing a program like that, would need to be applied for in October. And the monies wouldn't be available till probably next February. And if we don't get in this cycle, it's not till next October. So that's why I say it takes a couple of years for these things to kind of unfold, and why EPA is somewhat patient in allowing this to unfold as long as you're showing forward progress. But yeah, because the reality is the village could borrow the money on behalf of the private property owners, give them a mechanism for solving their sump pump issue, and loan them the money for 10, 20 years at 0% interest, and the problem is fixed. You fixed it for the homeowner, and you fixed it for your treatment plant.
Yeah, and I'm thinking with knowing that the EPA has programs and are developing programs like that, the fact that we might have some money that we could use that we weren't planning on having to use to offset different costs if we wanted, that makes a good carrot and stick approach. Take advantage of this program, or we'll pay 50% or something like that, or help you with the loan. That's the good carrot. The stick side is, if you don't do something and we catch you, then you're going to end up with an enforcement mechanism being a court hearing.
Yep.
So one thing I just wanted to add, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk, but as everybody knows, I always talk. Just as an example of what we're going to be up against, is that when we have torrential rains like we just had this past week, we almost can say we know exactly where it's going to be ponding at certain locations throughout the village. Even though we've put in storm drains to help, we have houses that still lie so low in the village that this one particular house I'm thinking of, there is already 2 sump pumps connected to the sewer. So in other words, they're still getting water in their basement. They're still pumping illegally into the sewer, but they still think it's the village's fault. So this is some of the education that we are going to have to really be good on, because this is a prime example of one property that I know of for sure. And so does the mayor. So, and I'll stop talking.
Yeah, we're running into safety.
Well, I think if I don't know how big of a agenda we have, so we can keep going here if we need to a little bit.
I was just looking at the agenda for service, and all the proposed projects and stuff are there for everybody to look over. Pretty much stayed the same. I don't think anything got changed since the initial.
That's correct.
Right. Let me ask this though, based on what we just heard from Brad and Brian, do any of the projects that we had within the wastewater treatment plant, do their priorities change?
That's a Brad question.
Yeah, well, with the belt press and hauling sludge and that stuff, that being a emergency expense right now, we had to kind of rearrange put some of our stuff that we were thinking about doing on the back burner, like the old shooting range building. We were looking at doing that possibly. That's kind of gonna tearing that down and putting in just a shed with the electrical stuff for that lift station down there. That's changed as well. That was one of the big ones, and I believe the expanding the basin was on there, but I like.
What? Yeah. I was gonna say expanding the basin was on last year, but we didn't do it. But it didn't make the top 7 this year for gold. So is that one that needs to maybe be put on and something else taken off based on this new information?
Well, see, I don't have that in front of me.
So can we do this? Can Brad and I and the rest of the team and our staff meeting talk about this, and then just resubmit to the committee if we had to reestablish or realign any of those projects instead of pinpointing Brad down right now?
Yeah, that'd be outstanding. That would be outstanding.
All right, we'll take that away,
Yeah.
Brian, for our staff meeting.
I like watching him squirm though.
I don't.
Well, things came up, so we had to shuffle things
Yeah.
around. So
I can't
Yeah,
say
no, it's fine. I mean,
can't say enough about, I'm going to step on you, Mayor. I can't say enough about these two people right here, Brad and Brian C. I could pick up the phone and call Brian C. in the middle of the night and say, guess what? And he's like, okay, got it covered. You know, the same way with Tom. Tom has decided to stay on until I can get back into the office. So that has been great. And Mr. L has been a great support for this team. And this team is just doing fantastic. So I can't say enough in my present condition to have these people as a part of my team. So I appreciate your understanding, but please don't stop the questions.
I do have one question about the liner for the pipes that are all messed up there.
Mm-hmm.
He got a bid on that, or is Tim doing?
Yes, and we would talk a little bit at this council, but we can talk here about that. So right now, as you know, we have advertised for 2 seasonal people that will be working with this team, mainly because we have so many projects going on. Right now, when Brad says we did this at the wastewater treatment plant, he means we, the whole team, regardless whether they're water streets or who they are, they're out there working. So Tim's plan, I talked to him today, is to get to the swimming pool on Thursday. Remember, one of those things that we're going to do because is to rip out the bottom of the pool ourselves. So hopefully we will have maybe a handle on getting somebody hired so that the following week we have, you know, somebody to go in there and help this team. You know, at the current rate right now, I can't pull Brad away a lot, you know, because Brad has got so much to focus on. So it's really pretty critical that we get these 2 people hired soon to help us out. So to your point, Mr. Cosgrave, right now we're working at the wastewater treatment plant. Again, Tim's goal is to start Thursday at the swimming pool. Once we get those 2 projects going, then we are going to jump to the I&I project, just because to what Brian C. said, you know, we got to stop what we know we got, and we got I&I there. So
Right.
I think we got this, you know, that's a good thing. You know, we were able to get all the projects and the budgets and everything in line with the team before I had to bow out for a couple of days. So we will go ahead and look at that. We'll go ahead and look at the projects to see if anything else needs to be done. And if so, you know, out of place. I would say, and I'm talking to phone a friend, by the way, it's Tim. He says that he believes the sewer is about 5 weeks out based on the work he has lined up to do right now. So
Okay.
5 weeks out is what our new timeline. You'll get an end-to-end timeline with all the projects as soon as we have our final meeting. So I don't think that's too bad, 5 weeks out.
And that's for the lining work, Terry?
I'm sorry, please.
That's for the lining work?
Yes, yes. On what I call the park market. I know that's probably not, I should know, I think the sewer number is 140, sewer manhole is 141 or 140. So over there somewhere. So I listened to him. So yeah, so about 5 weeks.
I don't really have anything further. Randy, you got anything? Randy? Anybody have any other questions?
I do not. I'm just listening, taking all of this in, making some.
I know you're doing good. So, Mayor, then do we need something from this committee that says, okay, let's go ahead and submit this plan to the EPA? Response.
I think it would be, yeah, I think it would be just a motion to say, yeah, we're good with it and go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say service committees, I'll make a motion. We submit the letter as written to EPA. We're good with that.
And I would second that.
All right, motion made, properly seconded. We're both in favor of it, so I guess send it up to council.
Yep.
With that, I really don't have anything else. So make a motion, we adjourn, I guess.
Yeah, I'll second that motion to adjourn this
All right.
meeting.
Okay, I guess we'll adjourn at 6:54. Thank you all.
Brian, Brad, thanks for joining.
Yeah, Brad, thank you. Mr.
Good
Collins,
talking
thank
to you all. Terry, good to see you.
Thank you. See you.
Brian. See you, Terry.
No, we'll go right into.
Yeah, we can go over into safety.
Okay, I'm ready for safety whenever you guys are.
You're on and still recording, so at 6:55, you can fire away.
Okay, 6:55, we'll start our safety committee meeting. Start out with roll call.
Atkinson,
Present.
McCreary,
Present?
Hamilton,
Present.
Okay. Also in attendance, I heard the mayor and VA. Is police chief around?
I am.
He is on.
Okay. And Brian, fiscal officer. And we got one council person missing.
Eller's on.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chuck's on.
I think
All
just
right.
I think we got all of them.
Rick is not on.
All right. And Barb.
Yeah, Barb is on.
Okay. Then we'll go to approval of minutes. I looked them over. I didn't see anything. Anybody else have anything?
I didn't see anything on them either.
No, they look good to me as well.
Okay. I accept the minutes as written then.
Ralph,
And visitors, do we have anything? Mayor, anybody
No.
have sent anything in?
Nope.
Okay. We'll go to goals. First one, 0 workplace accidents.
yep, we're good on the
Still
gut.
good, Terry?
Yep, we're still good. No accidents reported.
Okay. Repair missing worn traffic signs. We talked about that last time. Is that going to use new poles, a different style of pole?
Yes, that is correct. The style that can't be spun around. And we're kind of waiting, since we have, as you just heard, a lot of things that I told that we have in the to be doing over the next 4 or 5 months. Probably the replacement of the signs will come after we get the 2 seasonal people hired, so that we have more time and more hands.
Okay. And if we have no workplace accidents and our 0 fatal accidents, ought to be okay. And identify truck traffic problem areas and add signage. Do you have anything on that for us, Terry?
I do not. That's something that I'm going to work with the chief on, and probably I would ask your patience in letting me do that over the course of maybe a couple meetings, so I have a chance to meet with him and talk to our guys too. The mayor,
I saw. Oh, go ahead, Brandy.
no, it's just Terry again. I know the mayor's
Oh.
pointed out a couple of places, and we'll look at those, but I think it would behoove getting the chief and Tim on one call and us going through those.
I saw a truck. It was from my house. I could see it going out Canal Road. I know there's a no truck sign on Cliff Street and North Main. I don't know about the other street. The next one down that they could have taken.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention. So I just wondered if we could maybe put a sign at the end of was it Washington Street? Or is it, yeah, comes out there. Well, which one comes out of the paper mill up to 158?
Water.
Oh, water?
Water Street. Okay. Maybe some kind of a sign there that says trucks must use state route to leave village or something like that, or corporation or something, That way they know once they leave that at the end of the Water Street, they have to take a highway out of town, not another city street.
Okay. That's
Just a thought.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. I do like it.
Okay. Signage, our signs down along Water Street where they put the new sidewalk in,
Yes.
I noticed that there's tracks because they're so far off the road that there's tracks where trucks are still pulling off the road. And I noticed that the edge of the new pavement was like it had buckled in one of those spots.
Right. And we're aware of that. I'm sorry, Mr. Hankinson.
Go ahead.
We're aware of that. And we have got a rail that needs to be installed there. Again, it's just, we're going to have to fit it in. But we have all the railing. I think we may just need to buy the posts for the railing. But once we get the time to do it, and it sounds to me like maybe I'll be in town Wednesday to do some zoning look-ats. Maybe I'll drive by there and see if it's something we need to bump up or if it's something that can wait for a bit. But we do have the rail ready to install. Finding the time.
Well, I just thought maybe if you just moved the signs out towards the road farther where they would not have enough room to pull off the road, they'd have to hit a sign that could probably solve the problem.
And that would be
going through all of that.
Yeah, I like that, Mr. Hankinson. I think that's a good idea. Maybe it's something we could do in the short term. Yeah. Yeah,
and just, move them out towards the road and maybe put one or two extra signs there. That way they be spaced so that there's no room for them to pull off. So anyway, I just saw it tearing up the pavement. It kind of bothered me. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you.
And to add to that, I had also noticed that, and I had noticed that the street sign that noted no parking, no truck parking. Unfortunately, the sign is down and it's in the little Bope Park area in the grass.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we'll go to reports. Terry, do you have any report for us?
Yeah, the only thing I have to report is that someone again ran into our Basel sign there on the corner of Basel and West Market. Tim did his very, very best today to try to fix it. It's going to require us to basically get a lift and go out there and, direct traffic so somebody can get up there and stabilize that a little better. It makes you want to get a camera for that intersection because I'd sure like to know, obviously they either A, know they're doing it and just keep going, or B, don't know they're doing it. So.
Okay.
Which sign are you talking about there, Terry?
The one that says no turn up by the street light on the corner of Basel and Market.
Okay.
Well, it's that time of year. Didn't we have that problem?
We did.
Don't we have this problem when the farmers start running equipment and hay and stuff? It's a little bit taller than your semi-trailer, and it just, if they turn right there, it just clips it and knocks it up.
I think you're right, Mayor. And like he did fix it a little bit today. It looks bad, but they'll just have to get a lift and we'll have to go over there and fix it right. And I don't know if we could, place it higher. I'm not sure, but it does need to have something done because you're right. Once the
is Tim the one person watching our stream?
What?
I said, is Tim the one person watching our stream right now and texting you updates?
I don't know. Might be, but so yeah. Okay, that's it.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Please,
that's
Chief.
my report.
Okay, please, Chief.
Couple things. We talked, I think it was last meeting, about the how was it determined. What we were talking about was the side streets and Tim trying to plow, and how was a snow emergency determined. Pretty much Pickerington and Lancaster, they, as a rule, look at when the county declares it's a snow emergency,
they will go with that, but they reserve the right for their in Lancaster Service Safety Director, and I think in Lancaster, or I'm sorry, in Pickering, they said it was the mayor, can also declare that. So it's kind of open-ended on what we would want to do. I would think that for us, it would seem to me that maybe the best thing to do is if we hear that the county, has gone to like a level 2, that we, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning or it's 4 or it's whatever time it is, that we have somebody go out, drive the streets, determine how bad they are, do they need immediate attention, whatever. Now, the only downside with that is if these cars are already parked from the night before and we get an overnight snowstorm, I will tell you that I just don't think there's enough tow trucks in the world to clear all the streets where we're having the issues. So it may be even something more of an educational where we utilize our different sites to educate people that if there's over a certain amount of snow that parking on this side of the street is forbidden, and then list the streets off and go that route. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to somebody from the village declaring what is, or what they, at what point we go under that snow emergency as far as enforcing any sort of parking or anything that goes along with that. Let's see, moving on. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Moving on, the governor of the great state of Ohio finally decided that law enforcement are first responders, and we were afforded the Johnson & Johnson inoculation. Quite a few of my guys have already, because of their other full-time employment, they've already gotten the shot. They work in corrections or whatever. 4 of us went down and got this inoculation, which is the one-time inoculation. 2 of us became deathly ill from it. Also, quite a large contingency from the sheriff's department became very ill from it. It lasted about 48 hours and then was pretty much gone. Just everybody that's had it says they're extremely tired, but we've documented who has that. We put that into their personnel jacket, the card, a copy of that card, and then of course they retained the original. We've been pretty busy lately. Over the weekend, I was in almost all day Sunday on a suspicious death that we're working on. We have an autopsy tomorrow scheduled in Lincoln County, and one of the officers will be there to document that. And I think other than that, we have 2 people that are, we pretty much have them done as far as their backgrounds, and I'll be getting with the mayor on that to talk about bringing those 2 on, which will get us back to where we have a safety valve should we have another bout of some sort of flu or whatever that may be, which will help quite a bit. Getting a lot of complaints late in the evening hours of juveniles out and about. We're kind of hoping with them being back in school now that that's going to resolve that. There's also I think they call it senior prank around here. It goes by many names: senior tag, senior prank, whatever. And had just a report the other day about houses getting egged. Different little pranks they pull, but the egging is something that there's a zero tolerance for. That is criminal mischief, and depending on the amount that they do, can be criminal damaging. And if they are caught in the act, there is a possibility that charges could be filed through juvenile court. So we're urging all the parents out there to make sure that kids are not out doing things that are going to get them in trouble. Another concern with that is in the world we live in today, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you hear something banging on the side of your house, and somebody may mistake that for somebody trying to get in. And then unfortunately, we have a situation where somebody is seriously injured or worse. And we certainly don't want to see that. So I think at this point, that's all I have, other than Mayor, sometime, whether it's this evening or tomorrow, I need to get with you about a document we need to get signed for OPATA.
Yeah, we've been trying to get that. And then you got your vaccine and got sick.
Yeah, that's very true. So
I will be around. In fact, I know I'll be around tomorrow afternoon because I get my first dose of vaccine tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
So I should be back 2:30, 3 o'clock. I'll just text you when I'm coming into the village.
That's outstanding. Thank you. And I almost forgot this. Somehow I forgot it. Many of you know that we receive different things from the federal government, and over the years, our patrol rifles have come from the government. Basically, what they are, they're M16s that we have modified so they are not full or not automatic. They are semi-automatic only, and we have the ability then to issue those out to people who come on board, train with it, and are certified to carry it. And our audit is tomorrow morning, and they are quite thorough on that. Everything we have will have to be accounted for. So I will probably be tied up in the building probably from around 9 o'clock till noon-ish, 9:30 maybe, to make sure that we've documented everything. And other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, Chief. So everybody was getting sick on the Johnson & Johnson or the other one?
No, it was a Johnson & Johnson. And quite honestly, when we went down there, they gave us a paper and it said, these are the side effects. And they gave you a list, I think, of about 6 or 8 side effects. Me, being Mr. Naive, thought, well, if you get 1 or 2 of those, won't be too bad. I just should have been in Vegas at the time because I slammed the jackpot and got all of them. One of our other officers, he had it real bad also. And but so far, knock on wood, the other 2 seem like they are they're coming through it okay. There's some talk that if you have had COVID in the past, whether you knew it or not, and then you take that shot, that may be one of the catalysts for it having an effect like that on the person that takes it. I don't know that that's true, but when I talked to Sunday, when I was called out on the body run, I was talking to a deputy, one of the deputies that came over on the scene, and we were discussing the fact that it seemed like it was pretty widespread, the number of people that had everything from nausea to temperatures 103, 104 degrees. So yeah, it's a interesting thing.
Chief, I think a friend of mine is a nurse, and she's been nothing but COVID ICU ER stuff for about a year now, and told me the same thing, that if you've had it and didn't know it, and then you get the vaccine, you're probably going to get sick for a couple of days.
Well, I would have to strongly agree with her that she's absolutely correct, because I have to tell you, I don't remember in my life ever being that sick. And now, but it's amazing because you kind of wake up and you go, wait a minute, I don't feel that bad. And then within hours, it's like it, passes, but it's the 2 days in between that aren't much fun.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the chief? All right. We'll move on to old business. We have none on the agenda. And I guess we'll move on to new business. Anybody have any new business?
Now, I think most of our new business got taken care of in either goals or the chief's report with the plowing.
Bob,
I'd like to bring up something about Cliff Street. That's our street down here, Cliff Street. Of course, that's my street. It's used quite a bit. we have a lot of people walking up and down the street, bicycles, kids coming from school. Never really had any problem with parking on the street, but it seems like in the last few years we've had a lot of on-street parking where they're parking on the pavement. And Cliff Street is the only street other than Market Street that runs east and west through town that you could actually go through town with, if Market Street's closed. Anyway, it's the parking on the pavement. If somebody's walking down the street, they have to actually walk around the car, and it really narrows the street. People have to go off the regular driving area to go around the parked cars. I was just wondering what anybody thought about maybe making Cliff Street no parking on pavement from Granville to Hansburger. Anybody got any ideas on that?
Well, let me ask Bob, because of course, obviously I see people walking down it too when I yell at my dog in the backyard for barking at the people walking in front of your house. But that's a whole nother issue. Has the parking come with the addition of the homes being built across the street, or is there a home that used to be owner occupied that's now a rental that is having multiple people living there? Or, I mean, do you have any sense of where the extra cars are coming from to start with?
Most of the cars being parked are, there's a few maybe once in a while parks across the street from us. Nobody's in the driveway, but we have like 3-4 cars out along the road. And most houses across the street on the north side, most of those have real long driveways. So they should be plenty of parking there. Now me, I made a gravel area out in front of my house so I can park extra cars that's not on the pavement. But most of the cars that are parking are down probably the last 4 houses on the close to Granville.
Okay. The ones that have the big bonfire parties.
I don't know. Do they? I didn't pay attention.
If you're ever out at 1 a.m., I can usually hear music coming from that corner.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I ask.
Yeah.
But
I just know when you drive down the street, and a couple of times there's been a car across the street from them, and it narrows it down to like one lane. You could not get 2 cars past each other. One.
Yeah.
But it is traveled quite a bit with pedestrians and bicycles.
Oh yeah. Chief, what do you think?
Well, I've noticed that also. And I don't know if it is, I mean, my opinion out there is those places, most all those houses are still owner occupied. So I don't think that's an issue. I think what you're seeing is that a lot of those houses, the people are moving in and their kids all of a sudden have cars. So instead of them parking in the driveway and moving the car every time mom and dad want to go somewhere, they park it on the street. But with that said, I don't know if maybe we should look at it from a different angle, which is some of the streets in Baltimore, in most towns, and I'm not talking necessarily about Cliff, but in most towns would probably constitute an alley. And maybe it comes down to, we need to come up with what is the safe width of a street to allow on pavement parking. Instead of, piecemealing street by street by street. And I think that would probably simplify everything from things that Terry would be wanting to do to, if eventually at some point in the future we have a city planner comes in at least up front, we could say, look, the street has to be this wide. If you don't have it that wide, then you can't have on-street parking, and make it village wide. I'm sure there's guidelines out there. There's no doubt in my mind that there's guidelines out there.
I think I think it'd be an excellent look at, Chief. I really do.
Yeah, because then, like you said, it becomes a village wide as opposed to, piecemealing streets.
Yeah, I like the standardization. Look at that. I'd be willing to work with the Chief's department on that.
All right, sounds like we got action items and something for old business for next meeting.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for for safety?
Bob, I do.
Okay.
Up at Basel Street and Market on the, I guess, south side, where you come up over the hill and stop at the traffic light. There's no line or anything there. And believe it or not, I was sitting at the traffic light the other day with my left turn signal on, and somebody come out of the bank and pulled up beside me. And I just kind of sat there and waited to see what they were going to do. And they went straight ahead. So I made my left turn and, went on and thought about that. I thought, so I went back around the block and came up again, and there's no line or anything there. That, it shows them where they should be, I guess, coming up that way.
Are you talking on Basel Street there between the bank and the old Weaver Hardware? Right, correct. So if we could just get 8 or 10 foot line down from there, maybe, or something to help them, because they come out most of them seem to be coming out of the bank, and they'll pull up there and they'll be in the middle of the road instead of over 4 feet where they should be. I think we talked about that last summer too, didn't we? Or 2 summers ago when the road got repaved.
We did.
Because they didn't put a line there when they redid it.
They didn't put a line there because there wasn't one there, if I remember right. They only replaced lines that were there.
Well, I think if we go back, as I say, there was one at one point. Yeah.
Okay. Let me bring it up in staff this week and talk about that a little more. Okay. And then I'll report back into the safety committee. So that can be action item number. How many is that for me? 2 or 3?
I think that's 3 from safety.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm sorry, Terry.
Oh, no. It keeps my mind going. Trust me, I like it.
Okay. That's the only thing I had, Bob.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? All righty. 7:22. We'll adjourn safety committee. Our next meeting is April 26th. Thanks, guys.
All right. We'll take a 6-minute break until council starts. I'll see y'all in a few.